Hello. So I'm a migraine sufferer and I've just come out of a fog of a headache and it was horrible. But last night when I was awake at silly o'clock and wondering if I could invent a way of taking off my head and sort of being able to just get to sleep, I remembered something I read recently about Charlotte Brontë, who also suffered from bad headaches, which could have been migraines. So whilst I couldn't sleep, I disappeared into a rabbit hole to distract myself. And I started looking at Charlotte Brontë and her headaches. So welcome to today's video called Charlotte Bronte's Headaches, Remedies and Treatments of the Victorian Era, where I look into Charlotte's headaches, what she could have used to treat them and what impact these headaches had on her writing. So let's find out. So Charlotte often mentioned her headaches in her letters, describing periods of intense pain that would leave her incapacitated. These headaches were likely migraines given the symptoms she described, including light sensitivity and the need to rest in the dark and wanting a quiet space. Yeah, I can relate to that. There are suggestions out there that these migraines might have been triggered or worsened by her period of intense writing, stress and emotional strain, especially during the difficult period in her life, such as losing her siblings. In a letter to a good friend, Ellen Nussey, thank goodness she wrote all these letters, in October 1849, written after the death of her brother Bramwell and her sister Emily and Anne, Charlotte wrote about her headaches and how grief and emotional strain were taking a toll on her physical health. She expressed her frustration with these headaches, which limited her ability to work and write. She said, "I've had a long headache, a most wearying and distracting one ever since Bramwell's funeral. It can no longer be concealed from me that he died of his own reckless misconduct. No one in the house could look at him with any other feeling than compassion to the last." Also in a letter, thank Charlotte for writing all these letters, it really helps me, to W.S. Williams, her literary, I can't say that word, at her publishers Smith, Eldon and Co. in August 1852, Charlotte mentioned suffering from severe headaches, likely migraines, which made her writing difficult. She mentioned how the headaches affected her ability to concentrate and continue with her work on novels, and this was a significant frustration to her, which I can imagine she would not have been happy. This is what she said. "I've been suffering from severe headaches for the last 3 weeks. I cannot work and I am an entire burden to myself and to others. Every effort of thought is a torment to me. I've tried reading, but reading only irritates my head. Writing is a great effort." So let's talk about treatment. What was available? The frequent headaches Charlotte had could have been migraines or tension headaches, but in the 19th century, medical knowledge was limited and treatment often focused on managing the symptoms rather than addressing the underlying problem like they do today. So what treatment would have been available to poor Charlotte? So rest and quiet. Rest was a primary treatment, especially for women. It was believed that headaches were due to overexertion or stress, so a quiet, darkened room was often recommended. Cold compress. Applying cold cloth or ice to the forehead was a common practice to relieve the pain. And I can relate to this too. This is something I do quite a lot. But I question if the Brontes had access to ice. I mean, outside of winter months, of course. So then we have herbal remedies, and I'm sure Tabby knew all about these. Willow bark, which I learned about today, is a predecessor to aspirin. And willow bark contained salicin, which could have relieved the pain and inflammation. Again, I've just learned about this. I didn't know anything about willow bark. I assumed you chewed it. So if you know, let me know in the comments. That would be great. Lavender and peppermint. I mean, these herbs were sometimes used for calming properties, and they might have been applied sort of on your head, or you would have had it in a cup of tea. Peppermint tea is something I've tried before, and it's really good for an upset stomach too. So there you go. But yeah, I've tried lavender as an oil on, say, a pillow, but I don't think I'd like to drink it as tea. Valerian root is something I've just learned about today, and I might even look at it for me, to be honest, because it is still available. It has like a sedative or sort of a calming effect. So it was very good if you had a migraine to sort of try and relax you a bit. And also it helped you sleep. And sometimes when you have one of those heads, you cannot sleep. And then, of course, we have opium-based medicines, laudanum, which is part alcohol, part opium. And it was used so much in Victorian England. It seemed if you had toothache, take laudanum. If you had an upset stomach, take laudanum. It was the answer to everything. But as we know, it had addictive tendencies. There is a lot written about the effects laudanum had on people. But of course, Charlotte would have seen this firsthand with Branwell, and so she might have been reluctant to take it, remembering what he'd been through and how addicted he'd got to it. So I'm not sure she would have resorted to this, but that's just my personal opinion. Diet and hydration. There was an awareness of that certain foods, even back then, or lack of food, could trigger headaches. She might have avoided certain things whilst in a headache as well. This was quite a common recommendation when suffering. Something I still do as well. Your body feels like certain things and doesn't feel like other things. But for me, I find very cold water. It's lovely. So you never know, Charlotte might have done that as well. And then the good old-fashioned bloodletting or leeches. Well, there's no way we were going to get through this without talking about that. Not so common in the mid-19th century, but some doctors still use bloodletting or leechings to balance the humours and relieve pressure thought to have caused headaches. I can definitely say there is no way I'm going to try that one out. Did Charlotte feel the pressure to write after the success of her first novel? Was she worried that she was going to be known as this one-trick pony? By this point, all her siblings had died, and apart from her father, who I'm sure she wouldn't want to worry and confide in, and her friends who were not there in those long evenings, who could she confide her worries in? She'd already had her first novel, The Professor, turned down before Jane Eyre, so maybe this caused her stress and therefore headaches. Could she write again? Would the next novel be successful? I mean, look at her stress. She had an ageing and grieving father. All her siblings had died. She was alone and she was trying to write, but with no sisters to discuss the storylines and the plot with, like she did when she was writing Jane Eyre. It was 6 years between Anne's death and her marriage to Arthur. Who did she talk to about her stories with? Did she sit alone at night trying to write while being reminded her siblings were all gone? She had written Shirley during her siblings' illnesses, and it was published not long after Anne's death. And this was also around the time of the letter to Ellen saying she was suffering from headaches. I mean, then we have Villette, which was published in 1853. And we know that the year before she'd written to W.S. Williams and she was struggling with her headaches to write them. Were her headaches related to her writing? Was she worried that she wouldn't be able to write? And then we look at the way she wrote. Long hours cramped over her writing slope. I mean, it's not a great position for a headache. I mean, she was reading and concentrating in these poorly lit rooms as well. I mean, this may have triggered or worsened her headaches, if nothing else. And then, of course, she was determined to write despite her headaches. I mean, at the time, some doctors would say, work through the pain. But this was advice mostly given to the working class who couldn't afford to take time off work. But I'm sure Charlotte wasn't going to let these headaches stop her from doing what she wanted to do. I mean, I know from my experience, when you're in that fog, you just have to stop. Was she making herself ill? And of course, we know she had a bad eyesight, and this would have played a part in her headaches. I mean, I know when I have my headaches, I struggle to wear my glasses because they irritate my eyes. But then if I don't wear them, everything's foggy. Eye strain and flickering candles were probably a horrid combination. In the Victorian era, women's health issues were often dismissed and misunderstood. Women were classed as fragile, and this might have shaped Charlotte's experience with headaches being attributed to a nervous disorder or an emotional instability rather than just a real medical condition. But when I investigated, there were other 19th century writers also suffering from chronic headaches or illnesses. Elizabeth Barrett Browning, who wrote Sonnets from the Portuguese, and Emily Dixon, whose poems such as I Never Lost As Much But Twice also suffered from crippling headaches. But it wasn't just the women who suffered from headaches. There were famous men like Charles Darwin, Lord Tennyson and Charles Dickens just to name a few. Maybe it was more common than we think. What is my conclusion? Well, I think personally, Charlotte's headaches were stress related, not that they would have called it stress then. But we can't rule out a bad diet, bad lighting, lack of understanding of a condition. And of course, she was grieving too. Lots of things can trigger these headaches, but it doesn't take much when you are prone to them to set one off. I hope Charlotte found what worked for her to relieve the pain. I think I will read her later work with that little bit more respect, knowing what she went through just to get the words on the pages. Poor Charlotte, she had a rough time, didn't she, after all her siblings died? It must have been horrible. And when you think in those days, you know, you'd write a letter and it would be days before you had a reply. All your worries took a long time to talk through when you were just writing to everybody. Poor Charlotte. I mean, imagine if you were a working class person who had to go out every day to the mill or whatever, and you had one of those stinking heads that just crippled you. You would have to go to work. And if you're in the mill with all the noise and all the dust and all, oh gosh, it would have been horrible. Well, I did have a look and it said that what you found is that people that suffered from these terrible heads would swap shifts with friends and family and that would help them out. But oh God, I don't know how I couldn't work in a mill when I'm in the middle of it. I would probably end up being sick over everything. So what did they call it in Victorian times, I wonder? Because the word stress seems a very modern word. I mean, was it exhaustion? Was it grief? I don't know. I'm going to have to look that up. Does anyone know? If you do know, let me know what the Victorian word was for stress. Oh, I need to have a little drink. Keep hydrated. See? Good advice. Keep hydrated. It makes me feel a bit better knowing that I am not the only one that suffer with these headaches, and I've shared it with someone amazing like Charlotte Brontë, but also other people like Mr. Dickens, who I have a little soft spot for. So that's helped. Also, I just wanted to say a quick thank you to everyone that leaves me all those amazing comments, and the negative, because it's all feedback at the end of the day, isn't it? But obviously I prefer the nice ones. I try and reply to everyone because I think it's the least I can do. And also you have some amazing things to say. I do try and reply sometimes, like the other week, it was just full on. It's so nice of you to take the time out of your day to say something to me. And it warms my heart, it really does. Your support and your kind words really do make me smile. Oh, also, thank you to everyone that has subscribed. I've now reached over 1,000 subscribers and I can't believe it. At the beginning, I thought I'd only get about 100 people and their dogs watching my videos, but it seems not. And I am over the moon and a little bit shocked. If you haven't subscribed, join the party, please do. And say hi in the comments. Let me know where you are in the world, because I'm fascinated by that. It blows my mind to think this little bit of Yorkshire is being viewed by so many people. If you like this video, please do that whole thumbs up button likey thing, because it really does help me out and it lets YouTube know that we want to watch more Brontë content. Anyway, have a good weekend, everyone, and I will see you next Friday for more Brontë adventures. See you soon. Bye.